Everyone. Just want to run through the process of setting up, getting ready for working in our website. So the first thing to do is to start with a folder for your unit set up within your OneDrive folder. It's absolutely crucial that you keep all of your work in OneDrive and that you use, in fact, the OneDrive app. You should make sure that its icon is up here in the menu bar on your machine. And you want to just sort of click on that at the start of each session and just make sure that you're signed in. The advantage of using the OneDrive app is that it will send any new files that you make or any changes that you make from your OneDrive folder up to Microsoft's cloud storage. Okay, so that means that your work is in more than one place, and you therefore are much less likely to lose it. You can also access it from any other machine, even your phone, if need be. All right, so I've set up a folder here. I recommend you do the same, as I say, for the unit. And then within that, I'm going to set up a folder, just right-clicking and choosing this new folder option here. And I'm going to just call this AT1 for assessment task 1. You could call it assessment 1 or whichever name seems suitable to you. Okay. We've got a folder here. We need just a couple of folders inside that one for use in building out our website. Okay. These names are not arbitrary. I really, really want to emphasize this. You should name these folders exactly as I have. Okay, so we're going to first of all make a folder for your images. So that is where you'll store the photos or the other vector graphics in SVG format that you'll be embedding into your website. Okay, I'm going to make another folder up here at the same level, and I'm going to call this CSS. Now, we haven't covered yet what CSS is. Suffice it to say that that's the kind of code that we use for controlling how your website looks. HTML controls the content, and cascading style sheets is what CSS stands for. CSS is what we use for choosing typefaces, controlling layout, things of that sort. Okay, so there's our project folder set up with these two folders here. Your HTML files can in fact sit at the top level of the folder here. Okay. Now let's go into Visual Studio Code, which is what we'll be using for editing, writing and editing the code that we're using, that we're making. All right. So you'll see it says code up here in the top left-hand corner. That's how we know we're in Visual Studio Code. And what we want to do here is go to the File menu and choose this option, Open Folder. Okay. And from here, we want to navigate to OneDrive, to the folder that we made for the unit, and to the folder that we made for the website itself. So everything that, every single part of your website will sit inside this project folder here. Okay, so let's click on Open. Okay, you'll get this sort of a warning. Do you trust the authors of the files in this folder? And in fact, I would just click on this option here to trust the authors of all files in the parent folder web design. Now, you're the only person who will be working on this project on your own, but in a real world scenario, when you're working for a design agency, you might be working with a whole bunch of other people. Okay, and you definitely want to tell Visual Studio Code that you trust the files that are made there. All right. So we choose this option. Yes, I trust the authors. The authors meaning the people who are writing the code. In this instance, it's you. Okay, and you'll see on the left here that we have a representation of that folder here with little disclosure triangles here. So one for your CSS folder, one for your images folder. As I say, we're going to store the HTML files at the top level of that folder. Okay, so we've got a little welcome screen over here, which has just a couple of little shortcuts. New file, of course, is available under the file menu, as is the open command. Okay, I'm just going to click on new file. All right, and what I'm going to choose, in fact, is to enter a file name up here. Now, the first file in any website, or in fact within any folder within a website, has to be called index. And if it's an HTML file, usually it is, it's index.html. Okay, so we're going to say create new file. I could just hit return. And it's asking us where we want to save it. And this is exactly where we want to save it, here at the top level of this folder. Note, by the way, just as an aside, that I'm always using column view. All right, column view is very handy. And just going to click on create file there. Okay, now we have this file here. Now if we go back to the Finder, we see we're in the Finder up here. You can see there's that new file here. Okay, I'm just going to go back to Visual Studio Code and start working in here. Okay, so this Visual Studio Code is essentially a text editor. It's very different from something like a piece of word processing software like Microsoft Word or Pages. All it handles really is plain text. But it's smart enough to be able to identify what kind of code you are writing. So the first clue that it has, of course, is the file extension. So this is why we want to have all file extensions visible in the Finder. So we too can automatically, easily identify which file is which. So I'm going to start off just by putting in a doctype declaration. Now see that it's given me a little suggestion there, doctype. So I'm just going to hit return, save myself a little bit of typing, and it's very helpfully completed that for me, doctype HTML. Right. I could simply have continued to type and put that in myself, but that's pretty handy. All right. Now, the main element that we need is the HTML element. And we open that with an HTML tag. Again, gives us a little bit of helpful completion there. In fact, it's after I've put in that opening tag, it's very helpfully put in a closing tag. So again, remember that after that first angle bracket there in that tag, for the closing tag, it puts in a / there. Okay, so I'm just going to hit enter a couple of times. Right. So we've got the start of our HTML here and the end of our HTML there. Okay. So you might recall, I hope you do, from the previous video or from discussion in class or handouts, that the next element we need is the head element, all right, followed by the body element. So just as we talked about in the previous video, about every person needing both a head and a body, so does our web page. Okay. The difference, of course, is that the head element. Right, so I've just typed in the word head there. Hopefully closed it again. The head element does not contain things that are displayed directly on the screen, but this is where you do things like, say, put in the title. Okay, and again, after I've put in that title tag there, it's hopefully put a closing tag after it, and we've got the cursor blinking there, waiting for me to put in the title. Okay, so I'm going to type in my name and task assessment task 1. Okay, or I should say my personal site. I think this probably makes more sense there. Okay, so this title here will display in the browser tab that I have open. We can do other things. It is possible to put in things like in the head here to say which we'll be doing subsequently, to load in styles, the CSS file for formatting the page, and also other things like a little icon just to again display in the browser tab, and so on, other things besides. But that's enough for now. Okay. Now I'm going to put in the body element. Okay, and so again, note that it's hopefully completed that. Visual Studio Code has completed that for me. I'm just hitting return a couple of times. I'm making sure that I'm keeping my cursor indented here. I just hit the tab key on my keyboard there. And I've got it configured to use spaces each time I do that. So it's putting in, I think, 4 spaces there. All right. So I'm going to start off with something very simple. I'm going to put in a top level heading here. Okay, so the element for that is an H1 element. Okay, so we've got the opening H1 tag there, and again, let's put in closing H1. By the way, as an aside, notice that when I hover over that tag there, it brings up this handy little thing, MDN reference. So MDN stands for Mozilla Developer Network. So that's a wonderful guide. I find it better than W3 Schools. It's more comprehensive and in-depth. So it's really handy reference for all things web. So HTML, CSS, image formats, including SVG that we'll be using, and JavaScript as well. So if you ever want to check on a tag or how to use it, you can click on that and it'll take you through to that reference there. Okay, so I'm going to put in pretty standard sort of coding thing. I don't know where this comes from originally, but it goes back, I think probably even to the 1960s or maybe earlier. That first thing you have your code do is put a bit of text here saying hello world. So let's do that for now. We'll change that later. All right, so we've got a heading there. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got when we do that. So I'm going to go back to the Finder. All right, and you can see it's actually even giving us a preview over here in this rightmost column, in column view. What I'm going to do is just to drag that file index.html. I'm just going to drag and drop it onto the Safari icon. Personally, I like Safari. It's a very, very performant browser, and it does not drain your battery life when you're working on a laptop in the way that something like Google Chrome does. But use whichever browser you prefer. Chrome, as I say, is a bit of a power hog. It has a real battery drain. There are other issues with it, but it does tend to be slightly more cutting edge in terms of um, putting in new features and so on than Safari is. Apple, who publish Safari, are a little bit conservative when it comes to putting in new features. Okay, and you can see that here we've got a blank white page, and we've got a heading up here, a big bold heading saying "Hello World." All right, so there's our heading there. Okay, so this is gives you some idea of how the web looks without any sort of styling attached to it. The typeface defaults to Times New Roman, but it is, at any rate, perfectly accessible, meaning that people with things such as visual impairments or other accessibility issues have no difficulty accessing the content. All right. So what we want to do as we go out about designing and building our website is making sure that the website stays just as accessible as it does um, at a default unstyled kind of format like this. Okay, the other thing worth noting here is we've got a browser tab here. And notice that it has up here the title that I put into that title tag. So that text is there. All right. And I can even do, I'm actually going to keep this window over here on the right-hand side of the screen. And I'm going to resize my Visual Studio Code window to sit on the left over here as well. I might even just sort of drag that in there, or perhaps even hide that sidebar altogether just using this little widget here. Okay, so I'm going to write a little bit of code here and come back over here and just refresh that browser either using Command R or this little reload icon there. So as I go through the process of making changes to my code down here, I can come back and hit Command R or this little reload icon. I can see that change taking place there. Now, there are plugins that you can install in Visual Studio Code that will update your browser of choice automatically, so you can just see that happening in real time. We don't have those installed at present at TAFE, but this is a very easy thing to do. Just flip between the two, hit Command R. It's not a big deal. All right, so I'm going to put in, down here, I'm going to put in a P tag. P for paragraph. Again, it's closed it for me down here. Cursor blinking in between those two, and I'm going to sort of just type in some little bit of text here. All right, so there we go. Save that, come back here, Command R, and there's a paragraph there. Okay. After this paragraph, I'm going to put in another heading. I'm going to put in a second level heading. So that's an H2 heading. This is something I really want to emphasize, is that on any given web page, you should only have exactly one H1 heading. Now, if you look around the web, you'll see all sorts of people violating that, sometimes even professional web designers who definitely should know better, designers and developers. But this is something I really want you to do. You can have multiple H2 or H3 headings. They go down to H6, but only exactly one H1 heading. Right? So it's very important, again, from the point of view of accessibility for people with particularly visual impairments, but others as well. All right, this is a second level heading, so that I'm putting in there. Okay, when we come back and refresh here, you can see again using that default styling that this second level heading is smaller than this one. Okay, and just at the level of code, the web browser will understand that this is not the main heading, that this one up here is the one that says hello world. And that's how it helps people with accessibility.